two primary causes of diabetes are basically eating the wrong things in the wrong quantities at the wrong times in the wrong emotional state. And then the second is sedentariness. And that's one of the reasons diabetes is on the rise in the world is because in general we as a population have lived much more sedentary lives than we ever have in the history of our existence. And this is a major problem in creating the pathology.
Welcome to Thriving with Diabetes, the podcast where we empower people to live their best lives. I am your host, Ghamdan, a holistic wellness coach helping people overcome challenges related to type 2 diabetes. I believe that with the correct knowledge, support, and mindset, you can manage your health condition more effectively and lead a fulfilling and vital life. Living with type 2 diabetes is not easy, and it's important to acknowledge the difficulties you face. But remember that you have the strength and the resilience to overcome these challenges and thrive. In this episode of Thriving with Diabetes, we are talking about Ayurveda and its potential benefits for type 2 diabetes. Our guest today is Victor Briere, an Ayurvedic doctor and the co-founder of the International Institute of Ayurveda. Through this conversation, we will dive into Ayurveda in the context of diabetes. Victor will share invaluable insights and practical tips to empower you on your health journey to improve your diabetes management. So I am excited to have our guest with me today, Victor Briere. As you know, that our podcast is about empowering people with type 2 diabetes, and having an expert like Victor helps us achieve that goal. So before we dive into our discussion, I would love for for Victor to introduce himself, share some background about him, and tell us what he does. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Victor to introduce himself. Victor, welcome to Thriving with Diabetes podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Um, and thank you for the introduction. So basically, I've run a clinical Ayurveda practice in the United States, California, for over 13 years, and we just set up our first overseas location in Italy, in Tuscany, and Ayurveda as a holistic health science that's over 5,000 years old, one of the oldest living health sciences still practiced robustly in the world today, has a lot to say about the pathology of diabetes and has been dealing with it for a long, long time. It's more important now than ever because the rates of diabetes are skyrocketing, along with the rates of depression, because the two go hand in hand. So, happy to talk about whatever questions you ask and see what light we could shine on the subject.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing this summary and background about you and what you do. Uh, in our previous meeting, I mentioned that the term Ayurveda is new to me, and many people, may not be familiar with that term. I would like you to give us an overview of Ayurveda, its ancient organs, and the fundamental principles that underlie this holistic system.
Yeah, so it originated thousands and thousands of years ago in what is now India, but at the time, the alongside Chinese medicine, and people all over that region were trading health information, and it is an extremely sophisticated health system, completely holistic in its nature, which means that it addresses all facets of the human being, including the spiritual facets, with the fundamental philosophy that if we can keep our body in balance, if we can keep our mind in balance, and we can become authentic in our spiritual pursuits, then health is a byproduct of that. And that when we stray from those things in whatever way we do, then we start developing habits that ultimately break down our health over time. And that's a very long story short. But basically, when you're dealing with a disease like diabetes, which in Ayurveda is called prameha, you're dealing with a lifestyle disorder for the most part, in which over a long period of time, habits have slowly broken down the systems of the body, and you have developed a pathology that leads to the problems that diabetes typically presents. So, in order to manage and reverse that, we got to correct the lifestyle, the diet, take plant medicines, and address our mentalities and attitudes towards life.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing this information. At least we know what is it all about. Let's talk about a specific application of Ayurveda for diabetes management. How does Ayurveda perceive diabetes, and how does it address the condition from its roots?
So, diabetes, in Ayurveda, they actually describe 20 different types of what they call prameha. Not all of those are insulin resistance, but a few of them are. And that's what we're concerned with today. So, there's a pathology that basically starts in the digestive system that over time starts affecting the kidneys, bladder, urinary system. And then certain tissues in the body, like fat tissue, muscle tissue, nerve tissue, reproductive tissue, become deranged, or they don't function properly anymore. And so they start to break down. And because the digestive system's been impaired from the beginning, the pancreas stops functioning properly. But it's much more than the pancreas, because it's how the cells receive insulin in order to break down glucose. So what happens is that basically, without getting too technical, the tissues in the body get gummed up over time, and they can no longer function properly. And so there needs to be a very deep cleansing process that goes on before the body can rebuild tissue in a healthy way with a stronger metabolism and restore itself back to being able to digest properly. It's a misconception by a lot of people that diabetes is about eating sugar or not eating sugar. That's really not true at all. It's actually more about eating according to your digestive capacity at the time, and a lot of it is about meat consumption. So, removing the heaviest foods from the diet and the foods that are hardest to digest is one of the most crucial components that Ayurveda recommends.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing these helpful and great information. Let's move to, because you just finished with nutrition or diet. As you know that nutrition plays a vital role in managing diabetes. So could you explain Ayurvedic dietary principles and how they can be tailored to individuals with diabetes? Maybe you can share some dietary recommendations for people looking to regulate their blood sugar levels naturally?
Yeah, definitely. There are many, many guidelines. And one of the wonderful aspects of Ayurveda is that it addresses each person very individually. So, while of course there are going to be patterns shared by people, each person needs to have a customized diet based on where they are that moment. So, the diet even evolves over time during an Ayurvedic protocol based on what that person can handle and what that person needs. So there are a few factors to diet. It's not Ayurveda is very clear that it's definitely not just what you eat. It's also when you eat and in what emotional state you eat. So, and those three are equally as important as one another. Um, so, of course, what you eat is important. If you're going to be on a diet that's meant to reverse prameha, then it's got to be plant protein based carbohydrates with a lot less, sorry, plant protein and a certain portion of carbohydrates and then fats, and they're going to be a little bit higher in the protein category, a little bit lower in the carbohydrate category, and a little bit in the middle there with fats. And but that's going to be proportioned differently for each person. And but just as important than that, that's even more what we need to stress is that people need to develop a regular eating rhythm, especially if this is true for everybody, but especially if they're suffering from diabetes. And what that typically means, again, not in every case, but that someone's going to be eating only 2 meals a day, a late morning or very early afternoon meal, and a early dinner or supper. So there's going to be a long intermittent fasting period. And that period needs to be overnight. It can't just be any time. It has to be overnight while the person's sleeping, because that's when the body does a lot of tissue repair. And if there's less digestive load at that time, then the tissues repair much more efficiently. So, Ayurveda definitely recommends, in the vast majority of cases, a completely vegetarian diet that also has almost no dairy in it, maybe with the exception of some ghee, clarified butter. And the reason for that is because it way lightens the digestive load on the person, increases the metabolic powers immensely, and also delivers all the nutrition that one needs as long as they eat the proper foods for their constitution.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that information. Just to recap, that is, there are three principles, which what you eat, how much you eat, and when you eat, plus the emotional state, right?
Yes, right.
And in terms of having a gap between meals, you recommend it sounds like that you are saying don't eat before you go to bed, and you should have like a night as a way to do intermittent fasting.
Yeah, that's correct. So ideally, one would stop eating around 6 p.m., go to bed by 10, and then they wouldn't eat again until the next morning if they have something small, but they might not eat again until late in the morning, which can sound very daunting. And of course, this is a case by case thing. Some people, it's not appropriate to do that right at the beginning, but eventually they can build their body to do that, which is huge in reversing the protocol, or sorry, the pathology. And because it gives the metabolism plenty of time to remove the excess waste that's been accumulated over the years that's binding up the delivery of insulin.
Okay, brilliant.
And
Thank you
also,
for confirming that.
yeah, removes excess sugar from the blood after being filtered through the kidneys.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how Ayurveda emphasizes lifestyle choices. So, if you can talk about how people with type 2 diabetes can combine Ayurvedic lifestyle practices or choices into their daily routines to support their health?
Yeah, so that's one of the Ayurveda says that the two primary causes of diabetes are basically eating the wrong things in the wrong quantities at the wrong times in the wrong emotional state. And then the second is sedentariness. And that's one of the reasons diabetes is on the rise in the world, is because in general we as a population live much more sedentary lives than we ever have in the history of our existence. And this is a major problem in creating the pathology. So, with those two things as the causes, what basically people need to incorporate into their life is the proper food habits, like we talked about. But the second thing, which is just as important, if not more important, is movement and exercise and a certain amount of strenuous exercise. So, there was a study done by the Center for Disease Control in the United States. Thousands of people did it on diabetes type 2. And basically, they had three groups. There was one group that was given some simple, not even Ayurvedic, just simple dietary suggestions, when and what to eat. And then they were given about roughly 30 minutes of strenuous exercise every day. That was group one. No medication at all, right? Group two was given a placebo and told that it would help reduce blood sugar. And then group three was given metformin without any dietary or exercise suggestions at all. So at the end of the study, after 3 months, this is only 3 months, right? The group that received the placebo and did nothing else had an 11% on average reduction in blood sugar. The group that took metformin and did nothing else had an average of 31% reduction in blood sugar. The group that followed the dietary protocols and the exercise, after 3 months, without taking any medication, had a 71% reduction in blood sugar levels and lost 7% of their body weight.
Very
So,
interesting.
yeah, this is the kind of thing that Ayurveda proposes, and it's by far the most effective method, but it takes the most work. And because one of the issues in the pathology of diabetes is a desire to be sedentary, it's not just being sedentary, there's a desire to be sedentary for many different reasons, emotional, physical, whatever. That's what makes it hard. And that's where the challenge is, and that's why you need support like you offer and like Ayurvedic practitioners offer, is that we need the extra push, right, to get ourselves going. But once you get going, once the ripcord's pulled and you're on your way, you feel a lot better, you look better, your health is much better, your energy levels improved, the libido increases, all that stuff, then it starts taking on its own momentum.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. So, beside diet, so physical movement and exercise is um, or are
Mandatory.
very important. So we cannot neglect or like choose one over the other.
No, we have to do both if we want to be effective. And it's not just going for a walk. It has to be minimum 30 minutes strenuous exercise. And what strenuous means for each person is going to be different based on where they start, right? But it has to be strenuous in the context of their body. Exercise every day. And then, of course, there are very specific exercises that, get tailored to you, the individual, as you talk with your Ayurvedic doctor. Lots of yoga asana, which are yoga postures, breathing practices, along with what looks like more what people are used to, strenuous exercise. Minimal amount of weightlifting, but some weight bearing. Um, and one of the main reasons for this is that the uptake of glucose from the body can go either through the just digestive process and depend on insulin, or it can be absorbed through the usage of muscles. And when we use our muscles, our body takes up the blood glucose without requiring insulin. So the insulin resistance isn't a barrier to reducing blood sugar through exercise.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for sharing
Way
that.
out for people. Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
that's your exit route of diabetes is exercise.
I agree with you. So diet is very important. Physical activity, even if you cannot do like uh, weightlifting or like proper exercise, at least doing like a brisk walking for 30 minutes can help as well.
Yeah, it can help, but typically it's not going to be enough, and that's why it's so important to get help. Because someone who's working with you personally can know your limits personally and can help you create the level of exercise you need without injuring the body, obviously.
That's right. That's right. Thank you for that. Uh, let's talk about herbal remedies. I think that Ayurveda often includes herbal remedies. If it would be very helpful if you could share some insights into the role of herbal remedies in Ayurveda for diabetes management.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a whole pharmacy of herbal, um, of plant medicine that's available to help with the entire pathology of diabetes. We don't just want to think blood sugar, right? Because one of the problems with diabetes is that the tissues are essentially becoming very lax and weak. And so it's a full body problem. It's not just about blood sugar. And so they're depending on the person, what their symptoms of the diabetes that they have, whether it's frozen shoulder or burning or, there's so many, right? Um, but depending on those, we would create an herbal formula that can help a lot. I mean, it's not going to do all the work, but it can do about 30% of the work for us. And among those herbs that people might be familiar with if they've done some research is an herb called Daru Haridra, which is known as wood turmeric, which has berberine in it. And so that among herbs that clear the kidneys of cloggages, that tonify the muscles, that tonify the reproductive system, so on and so forth, vascular system, cardio system, and directly reduce blood sugar as well. There are many: ashwagandha, shilajit, darvaridra, turmeric, neem. There are literally probably over 100 herbs that can help, and someone who knows how to use them can prepare the right formula for you.
Can we take these as like food supplements or add them to our diets when we cook?
Both, actually. Food is medicine, so when you're eating the foods, you're going to be in an Ayurvedic protocol. You're going to be using digestive spices, certainly, cumin, coriander, fennel, thyme, oregano, paprika. That all again that depends on the person and what their constitution is and what they need at that time. But the culinary spices are essential to help the digestion improve. And then there are the more specialized herbs that are usually taken as a tea or as a tablet for the most part. And so those are taken, a few times a day, either before or after meals, again, depending on the individual.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So before we move on to the next part and ask for more practical tips, I want to ask you how Ayurveda and conventional medicine work together to provide help for people with diabetes.
Yeah. I mean, it's very personalized. I would say that's the important thing. And so when approaching an Ayurvedic doctor or practitioner, um, they are going to do a thorough history taking and a thorough evaluation of the lifestyle, and then everything is going to be created to address you specifically at that time. So the whole exercise routine, diet routine, sleep schedule, herbal formula, everything gets customized. It's very different from just saying, okay, here are your blood sugar levels, here's a pill, and hopefully you feel better. It's a different attitude.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, now I know you have already shared some practical tips and strategy. Is there anything you want to share in terms of like dietary choices, lifestyle changes, or stress management techniques for our audience who are suffering from diabetes?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should talk about the stress management because stress obviously plays a huge role in the pathology. Um, so, stress is universal. We all have stress. That's not the question. But when stress on its own changes the entire physiological setup. Um, Long story short, we have a huge nerve in our body called the vagus nerve. It's part of the autonomic nervous system, and it's largely responsible for determining whether we're going to function in a rest and digest mode or we're going to function in a defensive response like fight, flight, freeze. And that's part of the sympathetic nervous system. And so when we're stressed a lot, we're informing our body to enter into a defensive, threatened mode. That's what stress is, basically the experience of stress as we feel we have to protect ourselves from something. And then we do not digest nearly as well because our nervous system is not telling our body to digest. It's telling our body to protect itself in whatever defense mechanism it is most inclined towards. So the stress alone takes us away from a strong metabolism. And then over time, that takes its toll and we get toxicity buildup in our system, and that's what clogs up all our channels. But it's not only that. In order to free ourselves from the feeling of stress, more often than not, we adopt poor health choices, overeating, emotional eating, sitting around watching TV, lethargy, depression, and then doing things like avoiding contact, social contact, isolation, self isolation, all those kinds of things play a big role in creating our body over time. And so stress kind of hits us on two fronts, the stress itself and then what we do to cope with the stress. So part of reversing diabetes is starting to unwind all of those things inside ourselves and take a different path, find different solutions to the same problems. But it's much deeper than that, and that's a very hard process. Uh, so that's not to be taken lightly, but also is a major part of the healing.
Thank you for sharing that great information and practical advice from Victor. Now, I have got another question for you. It's about your inspiring message. So, what inspiring message or advice would you like to leave our viewers and listeners, especially those struggling with type 2 diabetes?
Yeah, I would say support is available. It is available, and the first step, and sometimes the hardest step, is to just reach out and go for it. And you might not get the perfect person the first go around, but you will find someone if you keep looking, and it's absolutely essential. And that you can do a huge reversal of the pathology. It's very possible. Some people can completely eliminate the pathology. Other people can make it so that it's really not a factor in their life anymore. And so it's worth doing the work, and your life will benefit in so many more ways than just having better blood sugar levels, right? Coming out of promeha or diabetes is about coming back to life and in ways that maybe have been forgotten for a long time. And it's a challenging journey, but definitely a worthwhile one. And there are a lot of people willing to help with it.
Thank you for sharing this inspiring and great message with our audience. So, if someone wants to get in touch with you or learn about more about you and what you do, how can they find you?
They can find me at reception at iiayurveda.com. So that's reception at iiayurveda.com. Very easy to get a hold of. And I'd be happy to talk with anyone who wants to do some kind of Zoom consult or anything like that, and we can get you on the healing path.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that as well. And first and foremost, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our amazing guest, Victor Briere, for generously sharing his expertise, insights, and time with us today. Your contribution has truly elevated this episode, and I deeply appreciate the information you have provided us today. I want also to thank everyone, our dedicated viewers and listeners, for being a part of this episode. If you are looking for additional assistance and support, I encourage you to book a discovery call with me at wellnessimpact.org. During this call, we can discuss your needs and explore how I can provide personalized assistance while addressing any questions you may have. If you found today's episode insightful and valuable, I invite you to join our community of people committed to thriving with diabetes. To stay up to date, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. For those who prefer other platforms such as Spotify, you can follow the Thriving with Diabetes podcast. Once again, thank you, Victor, for being our guest today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in this insightful journey. Until next time, take care of your health and keep thriving.